and I've been reading about it. At any rate, that's the face of evil. You're right. Albert Speer said to his son, when the devil's got his arm around you,
you don't realize it.
You don't realize it. How would you realize
because
it?
Because they pose themselves as friends, and I'm all about you. We're going to get through this together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't say where we're going to get to.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, but this is how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get into that more, but we're going to do some stuff on the Antichrist. And at any rate, we got a bunch for you. But Larry, this is, I mean, if this is true, this is so disturbing. And first of all, you ever take a look at Pope Francis? Does he look like anybody that's going to take down God?
Not under the rules I figured that there are. That God always wins.
He creates that another way. I just saw the stars when they clear it, and you can see all the stars without any kind of through microscope. It's just an enormous amount of stars, and the bones of the Christ in his hands and his humanity, and the Holy Trinity created that. I mean, you're going to take this guy out?
No,
Francis?
This is the hubris that goes with the position and the power and this one world order, this globalism that he's after. I mean, the man wants to have no borders.
So hubris means what? Because
hubris is where you're so full of yourself.
Okay.
You think that there's nothing to stop you, and you're
you're
so right.
They actually believe this?
They obviously do, because no one's going to stop them. They don't self-correct.
Okay. All right, there you go, folks.
Okay, this is our lady sitting there trying to say they still haven't taken the action against themselves to self-correct. They've done modest things here and there. They've thrown out, the religious human sacrifices every now and then by, cutting this bishop out or that cardinal out, and then now this archbishop out.
Does he understand he's attacking God? Do you think he really thinks he's attacking?
He doesn't care. He's
so that's not even a part of the equation.
He's building himself. He's building this one world order.
Okay.
The guy's a communist.
Okay.
And he's after what a communist think, that God is a fictional.
That's not even right. Doesn't even exist.
It's a construct for dumb people.
So why don't he go live in like Russia, where they only have one?
Because he's got the power.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Who's going to give up the power?
No, you're right. Nobody. Right.
He's got a car named after him, the Pope Mobile.
That's right. Sells a lot here in Indiana. We get a lot of requests.
But it's all about power. Is the new.
So there you go,
currency.
folks. It's a blinder. He's full of himself. It's not going to self-correct.
Well, now turn the page, and what do we know about what happened after that with this other guy and this other news?
I mean, with
Bertone.
Well, what they say
because what was said in this in the apparitions, okay, that could be discarded as
crazy
fantasy of
some nun went wacky,
some batshit crazy nun in Colombia.
Correct.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm taking the devil's advocate stance, like, oh, you got to trust some batshit crazy nun. Blah,
right.
Blah,
That's
blah.
right.
Okay.
No, and it would make sense. She's a lunatic.
Okay, so there's that. Now, then, what comes out?
Well, this is what a Cardinal Vigano, right? How do you say his name? Vigano was a competent Secretary of State and an ambassador to the U.S. under Pope Benedict. He was one of his allies. Bertone, however, is described by this Cardinal Vigano, thirsty for power, unscrupulous, manipulative, embracing Masonic theology and membership. The men of his circle were corrupt and sexually perverted, and this is current events.
Well, Bertone got put in administration. I don't know if he was towards the end of Benedict the 16th, but they kind of like strong on Benedict the 16th.
It was towards the end, right.
You got to put him in, Bertone in.
Right.
Okay.
He was forced to do it.
Move Vigano out and put Bertone in. Okay, so that he could move all these pieces into place. Okay, like the Obama team,
right?
Moving people into place in the deep state government. It's all been going on at the same time, tangentially, all over the world. This is what the one world order is about. They're not just doing it piecemeal. They're doing it in sweeping changes all at the same time.
So that's why who the President of the United States is extremely important. Are they of the one world order mindset, or are
and
they...
this is where Tom Zimmer, or otherwise known as the Hermit of Loretto,
right?
This fellow who bought the brick to put into the holy doors that were sealed up there at St. Peter's, that were opened up during the last Holy Year. and he saw the opportunity that you could buy a brick and have it have your prayer engraved on it, or a prayer intention, whatever you want, put into these doors, and that all the masses that would be said in St. Peter's until the next Holy Year, those would be the special intentions, the non-expressed special intentions during these masses that was to be going on, the quiet proclamations or petitions for prayer. And so he bought one of these bricks, and he was told by the Blessed Mother to put this man's name on a brick and to get it into the doors, because this man would be the one that would bring God back to America.
Really?
Yeah, this was back in the 80s.
So when did they open up the door?
I don't know if it was the
90s?
early 2000s. I don't know when,
Something like that.
I don't know if John Paul II opened it up at the last Holy Year. I'm not familiar on it, but anyway,
Yeah.
when they opened it up and they saw the name that the man put on that brick was Donald J. Trump. Now, Donald Trump was quite the playboy.
Yeah, you're talking about the Playboy. Donald Trump's going to be the president.
And that's what people said. You want to put this Playboy's name on this thing? He said, yeah, this is the man that's going to bring God back to America.
Unbelievable.
All right, so here we are today, okay, and you got a guy who could have done anything, gone anywhere.
Played a lot of golf.
He could have just had, the time of his life, aging out and doing things, but he knew this guy does stuff, and he came along and he said, you know what? There's a bigger problem than anything I've ever built or had fall apart on me, and that's this country. And if this country goes, it's all done, and so he dedicated himself to trying to, like he said, make America great again. Not that he wants to go back to the 1950s or 40s. He just wants to raise the floor up and not keep lowering the ceiling like the rest of these folks want to do to equalize everything. They want to lower the ceiling rather than raise the floor for all these people.
Let me ask you this, based on, because I know that with Torellia telling you that is very, very important for him.
He knew I was going to have to deal with it.
Okay.
I think was what he was saying. You need to know this.
Given that Trump's name was on there to be the president, he was the president in 2016 to 2020.
But this brick was put in 30 years before he did that.
Based on that brick and Trump running for president, what are the odds are, looking at that prophecy, that he will become the next president, in your estimation?
Well, I just pray every day that he's the guy, because if we keep going on this path right now, I don't see what's the point in trying to stay around for the fight, because they're going to load it all up against, and what they're going to do, they're trying to collapse the church. Okay, and we're being fought from outside and apparently from inside here with the collapsing of the pillars.
Which is what Bergoglio says.
Right.
We got inside and outside.
Right. Now he's saying there's all these ways or paths to God. He doesn't want to piss anybody off.
So they're destroying the church by proclaiming that.
And what are we telling all these people that grew up like you did with the Baltimore Catechism? Okay. What does that mean? You just throw it all out?
Means nothing, yeah.
Apparently it doesn't mean much to him, because he's trying to state that there's all these different paths to God. And, there may be. We could be totally full of crap, but in the meantime, the teaching says something completely different.
That our Lord will make plenty of room for those that are universally ignorant. In terms of, like, say, if you're a Muslim, but you behave like,
kind of, okay.
but you behave like a Christian,
Not aware.
and you're seeking to know Christ beyond what the Muslims say who he is or was. God knows what's in our heart, because he said, well, they asked him, what's the most important of all of the Ten Commandments, and he said, love the Lord thy God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. In other words, he's saying that encapsulates really what the church is trying to do, and me and the Eucharist self, so that you can love God and love your neighbor. But ignorance is one thing, and he's got to deal with that, because some of these people were brought up with ignorance. But that's different from saying that you going down that path will get you to Christ.
Right. And this is kind of what Father Havel used to always tell me with the Ten Commandments. He says, if you just pay ultimate attention to the first one, the rest of the 9 don't matter.
There you go.
If you take care of the first one, have this divine indwelling, this great love for God. The rest of them don't matter because they don't come into play.
That's right.
So they're in a hierarchical order going down. That all right, you didn't get that one. All right, well, let me revisit.
Let's
on
try
this
this one. Yes.
Okay, so the 10 Commandments is the one commandment for dummies.
All right.
Maybe
right.
you didn't get it on the first pass. Here's what.
Yeah.
Well, you still now you want to talk about the neighbor's wife. Well, she's off limits too.
That's right.
Don't be, and that goes for ladies too. Thinking about the husband down the road.
That's right. Correct.
He's a better provider. We have to, take care of the priorities that go on. But this is where I'm saying if we don't have discipline, if there isn't any sort of not retribution, but there's no cost to bad behavior, there's no reason not to do something.
That's right. Correct. That's right. Right.
And this is why we have such, I think, declining numbers in the church. I had a great discussion with a friendly priest the other day, and I said, how are numbers at church? Oh, they're okay. I said, are they okay or are they great? He says, no, they're okay. And I said, it's going down, isn't it? He says, yeah. And I said, young people aren't coming as much. Well, I got some. I said, do you have them all? He goes, no.
Yeah.
And I said, why? And I said, you want to get them back in? I said, I'll tell you a quick way to get people back into the pews. And he says, what's that? I said, start enforcing the rules on some of these politicians.
And the kids want those rules too.
Well,
they really want to be.
And they want to know if you're going to have a rule, let's enforce it.
Right.
Otherwise, you're a hypocrite. And the kids today with their fact checking everything, right now, as you're talking, it irritates the crap out of me. I'll be having a talk with a 20-something,
yeah.
and they got their phone out, and they're fact checking everything I'm saying.
Right.
While it's going on. I said, you're fact checking me against an article I wrote 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I know what I wrote.
Yeah. Well,
they say, who wrote this? I said, what article are you looking at? I said, I wrote that.
Right.
They go, well, it was up on some blog site called OLTIV. I said, yeah, that was my blog site.
Right.
I said, yeah, I wrote that.
Well, you were a batting coach one time. Rules are important in batting. Is a certain way that you hold a bat, or
everyone.
Or can you just swing it any which way?
Well, in hitting, everyone's different because their body mechanics are different.
All right.
Okay, and their aggressiveness at the plate is going to be different. So part of being a good hitting instructor is understanding what it is you're working with.
Okay, all right.
So that's the first thing you do because your body mechanics can't be the same as mine.
That makes sense.
Because we have different, flexibility. We have, I might be taller than you, or the angle of attack. All these things have to be taken into place. So what I have to do is I have to see what are the raw materials I have to work with here for this swing, and then help this boy or girl get the most out of their body mechanics.
Okay, all right.
That's what I do as a
So rules do make in the person and then the individual differences. You have to factor all this stuff in.
And then you try to get their inclination, and it becomes down to attitude. What's their mental approach to things?
Okay.
But this is how the mental approach fits in very well with then your spiritual life.
Absolutely.
And dealing with these things. So they go the disciplines go hand in hand.
Okay.
And the kids, I think, today are looking for these disciplines, and they're not seeing it because they see that the older folks, the olden dudes, aren't, holding themselves accountable.
No, they're not.
And so this is where I think that the hope for purity in our lives, and that might be where the hopeful of the people fact-checking, that they'll see, purity doesn't change its message.
The greater good, motive, why you're doing what you're doing.
It never changes.
And if you have the choice, go for the positive, not the negative.
Right. Did you ever study Machiavelli back in school?
I didn't, but
You
bits and pieces.
You probably did. You knew the name. Okay. Well, Machiavelli, he talked a lot about, people versus the state versus the people, and things like that. And he had lots of good buildable ideas for people. And one of the things he says, always try to emulate the great people. Because that way then, if you try to do what the great people have already done, what you do, even if you fail, you're going to fail on the greater side than on the lesser side.
Sure.
Then it's always better to fail on the upswing than on the downswing.
Downswing, sure.
And so, I'm paraphrasing a lot of this, but Machiavelli had a lot of good thoughts on living and how to go about, living a constructive life. And so that was just one of the things that if you're gonna fail big. Try to do great things. The little things really don't matter so much. but it's better if you fail trying to do big things. So at least your intentions were good, and this is what I call your purposeful intent.
Yeah.
God recognizes that. You were talking about these ignorant, folks out there, the ignorant masses. They just don't know. This is why they had missionaries going all to the corners of the earth to try to spread the gospel of Jesus. Here's your hope. Okay, you're living desperate lives. There's hope. Let me tell you about them.
You talk about failing big. Napoleon was a conqueror, and he had the Colchunis to go into the Vatican and take the crown off of the Pope and crown himself. I mean, this guy was on the edge, and he was a great general and a very intelligent man. But towards the end of his life in St. Helena, you can read his confession of Christ. Mm-hmm. You talk about failing big. I mean, nothing's worse than fail big than to push the Pope off into some prison and crown yourself.
Well, there may have been some issues going on at that time too. There was always a problem between the church and the state, and this is when it went back was the Council of Trent back in the 1500s.
Yeah,
that's when all the popes and the bishops really became politicians.
Is that right?
Yeah, they all had to deal with it because the states were going to shut them down.
Well, what was the deal on? Why did they decide to become politicians?
Because they didn't want to be put out. They didn't want to have guys like Napoleon come around taking the crown all the time and walking around like it's a Halloween outfit, playing pretend. But I mean, they had to operate in country, and they didn't. These other guys had big armies,
Okay.
There was power.
Was it a sellout? Should they have gone for the greater good on this thing?
Well, it was. I think it was probably there was a sellout to try to live and exist. They confessed to something that wasn't true in order to not be murdered. They accepted something. It's like what happens when Muslims go into a Christian community and they tell them all to convert and deny Christ,
or
deny
eat your
Jesus.
dogs,
or we'll eat your dogs. Then we're going
with
to
the Haitian people.
Well, then we're going to cut your head off. But
right.
They eat the cats first because the cats cook faster. So it's a thing. So that's what I hear. So.
But I mean, so here we are talking about the human dynamics and this clash between good and evil and how it manifests itself in politics, in cardinals and bishops, and what do they choose? Do they choose to protect the souls of the people and to nourish them with the truth? And apparently, we're in very deep trouble because it doesn't seem to be an awful lot of them coming forward.
Well, no,
and
because,
defending the faith.
Well, they've been scared into submission. I mean, look at what's happened just in the last year or so here in the North American Church. You've had Cardinal Burke shut down.
Right.
You've had Bishop Strickland shut down.
Yeah, and these are people that operate very
high.
You got
Vigano
being shut down.
Right. And they're trying to make the good guys into the bad guys.
So here, let me read another little bit, and we'll see if it brings us into more dialogue. Pope Benedict says about Bergoglio, or Pope Francis, quote unquote, his gaze frightened me. And having him in front of me was like seeing Satan. Is this a crazy nun, or is this really coming from heaven? He confessed to me that one of his goals was to throw mud at the Mother of God, to eradicate the dogma, if possible, and trample on the Eucharist. He told me he would eradicate the extraordinary rite in one fell swoop. Now, they mean the Latin Mass. He'll eradicate remember,
Which he did. He did.
Did he?
Oh yeah. You can't have a Latin Mass now in any of the churches. You can only have them in oratories and the special places that are set aside. He doesn't want them in the parishes anymore because that's too much, and he thought that he doesn't want to have that being taught to the younger, the new members of the church. They want to reduce all this stuff and put it in special places where they can hide it away and it's hard to get to. And that was one of the reasons I think that Bishop Rhodes declared the Mother of Mercy Chapel in Rome City then to be an oratory. Whether he did it by design or by accident, by doing that, it allowed for the Latin Mass. And one of the things that I remember is when I was talking with him about redevelopment plans, I said, well, if we do a back altar for this, which is actually a front altar back in the old
style, yeah.
order.
He's talking about that there would be the tabernacle, and the priest would face the altar with his back to the people, and everything was focused on the tabernacle, where the host, which we believe and is the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ, even though it's in a different form.
Now they practice what's called the Novus Ordo, and they all face in the congregation.
The other way, that's right.
And that started a lot of confusion. I think that was also one of the things that started the slippery slope towards disconnection with people with the beauty and the stature of the Eucharist. And
yes.